On 26th of May 2022, Kevin Parle turned 42. It was his 17th birthday on the run. Can the events prior to him becoming a fugitive and the information on his alleged crimes help pinpoint where one of the Britain's most wanted men is today? This is the story of the deaths of Liam Kelly and Lucy Hargreaves. Penultimate mic check of the year. Penultimate mic check of the year. Even the carrot sweater left the closet. Have you? Okay, that didn't rhyme really very well. Right, let's check this. Check if the mic is on, and let us begin. Penultimate. It's sketchy. If you think about it, It's sketchy. Well, Detective Unit, I'm super excited to be here with you today, because today's case probably fits the bill to this channel and the whole purpose and the whole niche to a T, where we cover a mystery, we cover an unsolved case in such a way where I like deep dives, right? So I live and breathe a case and all of the information I can find online on it for a few days. I literally do it when I'm slacking at work, getting up, researching. Slacking at work, research. After work, research. Sunday night, research. You get it. And here, there was some information online that I could find, very limited information online, and then most of the work is done by somebody that I have left the mention of, like I have dropped a mention as an Easter egg at the end of my last video, and that is the chief from the first couple of seasons of Channel 4 Hunted, Peter Bleksley. You will most definitely feel inclined to have opinions on both the police work here, when it comes to Merseyside Police, on Kevin Parle and the investigation, and most probably on Peter Bleksley himself, who took over the investigation and really the manhunt on from 2019 onwards. And I'm fine with that. Here, I'm not taking an angle of directing you one way, of informing the police if you have any clues on Parle, or informing Peter Bleksley himself. That is definitely not the intention of this video. It's just to take all the information and present it to you in an unbiased way, and then we can all see, does it lead us to a certain pathway, because we should all really have the same goal in mind, and that is to catch Kevin Parle. You guys usually like to know the sources that I use for this podcast and any recommendations once you actually listen to the video, and then where to go from there. I would really suggest listening to Manhunt. It's produced by BBC, so it's really well done, the podcast, and it's voiced by Peter Bleksley, and it's kind of like you feel like you're part of his journey. You feel like you are on the manhunt for the man himself with an ex-police officer. So it really does give you that energy, it really does give you that vibe. The sound is great, and obviously the podcast production. Then I have also looked at all of the articles I could find online, which are very limited, I'm not going to lie. That is the least amount of information that I could really dig into, and that is alarming in itself. And then the third source was Peter's audiobook. So I would suggest starting off with the podcast, and then if you want, you can read the physical copy of the book called Manhunt, or you can also listen to it as an audiobook in his voice. As always, when it comes to any sort of unsolved cases and mysteries, I will be pointing out where I would personally, as a third party coming in onto all of this content and all of this information, like to know further details, like to know more, and where I think there are gaps, and where I feel like certain pieces of information might point us towards something, somewhere. And I shall, hopefully, if I get the bloody balls, reach out to Peter himself once I publish the video and post it on Twitter, because he is pretty much active on Twitter a lot, and see if he might want to have a chat and answer those gaps for us, or what he can, because yet again, we are trying to weed out an individual. We are trying to get him to emerge from hiding for 17 years, which I suppose isn't really an easy task. So there's probably a certain amount of information that Peter is keeping close to his chest, and maybe even the Merseyside police. It would just be really good to know what information we actually can't reveal, because it would give a sign to somebody that we are on their trail, versus like what information maybe we are actually lacking, where, you know, when you're really deep into something, when you're really on the case, like you kind of don't even see it as an outsider. And that's kind of the angle that I'm going for, the outsider angle. Somebody who has lived and breathed this case for the past couple of days. So speaking of the case, there are a couple of trigger warnings here. We're going to be talking about brutal murders of a teenage boy and a mother of three. The second case is just infuriating on so many levels, both of them are, but the second one also results in the person being set on fire. We are talking gang crimes today, so if that is something that you don't want to listen to, just case displays of extreme violence and brutality, not sure what's going on with my voice there, I would suggest going for a different one on this channel. There's plenty of deep dives where this one is coming from. So to start the space off with the alleged gang member himself, we need to talk about Kevin. That would have been another great title for that podcast. I don't spite the title Manhunt. I think it's pretty cool. It's, you know, it just says what it does on the tin, right? However, we need to talk about Kevin. Would be appropriate, considering Kevin's background, that we actually, I'm not gonna lie, do not have much on. I would really much like to know quite a few details when it comes to Kevin Parle. What we do know is that Kevin Thomas Parle was born on May 26, 1980, to parents Joseph and Shirley. We know that he had a brother called Martin, but pretty much even this I know because of Peter's book. I don't know if Martin is younger or older, I don't know if he had any other siblings, and I really don't know much about his relationship with his parents. Regarding his parents, there is a cloud of doubt of whether or not they might have helped him through the years. One thing we know is that there's nothing online, and that means no indication that he reached out to them either. What I mean by that is that would have probably been picked up had he reached out to his family, or have they been in constant contact with him. He probably wouldn't have been on the run for 17 years. As for his early childhood, he was raised in Mosley Hill in Liverpool. And even the quick Google search will tell you that Mosley Hill in itself is not a rough area. It is described as a leafy suburb. John Lennon went to school there, Freddie Mercury lived there for a while, and Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City also lived there. It is not the area that's directly linked with gang crime, but the wider area of Liverpool is, as you'll come to find out. In school, so we're talking prior to teenage years, Kevin was described as an ADHD kid. He didn't really fit in with the others. He didn't play footy, and he had a friend who was kind of grubby, not very smart, and Kevin was said to have been looking out for this one friend. It was said that he wasn't a bully. He was kind of cocky and odd, but not really the person to take the spotlight. When they would play army, for example, he didn't really engage much with others. He would have weird outbursts here and there, however, something like kicking doors and desks, and he seemed to be taking glee out of it, to really be proud of himself when he would have these outbursts. Peter interviews a couple of classmates for the podcast, and if there's one takeaway that I have maybe noticed as a pattern that all of these classmates would have said, that is that they would stay away from Kevin. He would be that type of kid that you really didn't want, to make friends with. It's like, it's okay, I'm never friends with you, I'll live my life happily. Like, that's the type of energy that I have gotten from those interviews. The only time they have seen a softer side to him is when he wrote a lyric for a school project. As to an inkling of the plans he might have had for the future, it is said and mentioned only one time from what I have seen that he might have planned to go to army. But at this point, there were also rumors that his mom might have already disowned him. And rumors on the streets were that Kevin was a puppet master. So now we are moving towards his late teenage years and then his early 20s. He was already someone with street cred, who would get people to do his dirty work. He was known in the court system, but something that even Peter mentions is that he was not known for domestic violence offenses. So this is where we are headed next in our story. Before we actually talk about his dating life, I actually had a question here if I were ever to have a discussion with Peter, and the gap that I noticed, and that is the criminal record. Like, I have tried my very best going through different Google searches to find that criminal record, because really the limitations of the information that we have on Kevin Parle are just infinite, and I couldn't find any court records, I couldn't find any PDFs, any sort of sentencing, anything on any hearings, and I don't know whether that is because he was still minor and a lot of those would be sealed. It might be that it is just early 2000s and that information wouldn't really be on the internet, but I would like to know more on his street cred, more on what's known when it comes to his criminal record prior to this time. When it comes to his relationships, would we really call them relationships? Probably not, because he was known as the ladies' man. It was said that he would have 2 or 3 girlfriends at any time, and he was famous for using a chat-up line, "We should do breakfast sometime." It's so lame. I'm sorry, it's just too early. Not even brunch. Like, why would you get up to go on a date? I just it's the worst of the worst. I'm sorry. It's just so bizarre to me. It's like, get a drink sometime. Like, usually you would want to do a date in the evening, not in the morning. Am I crazy for thinking this? Why would you invite somebody to have breakfast with you, especially if you're a gang member? Maybe that's why he was busy during the day. Cool. I just asked and answered myself. It was said that he was confident and chatty around women, but he would then turn around and be violent and manipulative. With the 2 of them, he would get nasty.
But I soon learned that he could be violent and manipulative. On the outside, he was so charming, polite, and engaging. A real charmer who wanted to impress. But when it was just the 2 of us, that could change in a flash. He could be nasty, but as far as his friends were concerned, he was a big character, no more than that. I don't know if they simply didn't pick up on his menacing ways, or they did and ignored it. I've read books about domestic abuse since I was with him, and he fitted the bill as an abuser with his threatening ways.
One woman that dated Parle and was voiced over by an actress for an interview with Peter said that he would follow the old-fashioned courtesy. He played well being an alpha male. You could tell that he even went to a good school. He would pay for meals, and he had self-control, like you would rarely see him drunk. However, then there was the whole other side to him, the jealous and possessive side. This next bit, yet again, where we have really gap of information, because this person just says this sporadically, and I'm not sure if Peter interviewed them directly or how he obtained this information and this interview, but this woman also said that he had a thing about his family not loving him, that he drove too fast and that she felt unsafe with him at all times in the end. And quite a few people will mention this about him just changing speeds in the car as and when he wanted, being really impulsive, and them feeling just on edge when around Kevin Parle.
There will be others out there who have been through what I went through.
His manners were great, but controlling. He told me where to book, decided where we went and what we'd order. He was the centre of everything. He was the most important person in the room and everyone else was subservient. But there was an edge. He was always aware of what was going on outside. One night some of his mates arrived in a big silver car, picked us up and took us back to my flat. They'd heard something and they needed him off the streets. I only went to see him in Liverpool once, and he picked me up from the train, but the whole night ended badly. For a start, we had a table next to the fire exit, so he could leave in a hurry, if necessary. And he showed me a knife he was wearing down his trousers. It meant he couldn't sit properly. We did leave in the end. At one stage, I thought it was going to kick off at the bar, but it was tense and uncomfortable.
Another one of his girlfriends from that time would give us some more insight, saying that he would be seen with teenagers and his excuse was that he was keeping them safe. Yet again, this was different times, early 2000s. I hope people would see this as a red flag today. When I heard this, I was like, oh my god, like today he would be probably like seen, yes, either as a gang member who is just protecting younger members of the gang, or at worst as a pedophile. Like, you just wouldn't ignore this the way that people did in the early 2000s. She would say that he was a charmer, but behind closed doors he was regularly violent. This girlfriend also described a situation where her and Kevin were at a bar and he would take a table that was next to the fire exit so that he can leave in a hurry if necessary. This is where we see the side of Kevin where he starts bragging when he's comfortable with somebody. He would brag about a knife that he had on him. He would say that he took one of the arms of somebody who threatened him. He would then say that he was an arm robber, and she found him fascinating until the red flags just couldn't be ignored. Two red flags that this girl pinpointed for us in particular was when he would play her a video of his dog going into a field of sheep and ripping them apart alive. And the second one was when he gave her a call from a police cell saying that he will be there 3 months to life. So she asked for armed robbery, like what are we talking, why is the range that big from 3 months to life? And he replied that she should use her imagination. There's a few tidbits here from the interviews with these women that I picked up on that don't really fit anywhere, and that is that he was always on edge and aware of what was going on outside. Like, everybody kind of said that, but mostly the women that were interviewed, and he would mention Thailand a lot as the place that he was familiar with. That might become relevant when we go and move on towards the theories section. When Peter spoke to the behavioral analysts who reviewed his interviews and other intelligence, they would describe Kevin Parle as a psychopath. There is that glib to him. He is a superficial person with no remorse, wrapped up in himself, and has behavioral manifestations of impulsivity, like driving his car too fast or sitting next to a fire exit, always making sure that he is ready to jump out and run away. Just like we don't have his criminal record, we of course don't have his mental health record. We don't know, did he ever get treated? Was he ever diagnosed with anything at all? However, the psychopathy trait might actually not be far from the truth, because we learn about this incident where his brother was actually in an accident when Kevin was already on the run. So Kevin's already a fugitive, his brother ends up in a hospital, and of course, because Kevin's on the run, he never goes to visit his brother. There are many details here that we are missing when it comes to Kevin's personality, when it comes to his family life, but something as a main pin from everything that I have just mentioned and all of the interviews that I have listened to is that Kevin Parle was very confident in being Kevin Parle. He never hid his accent or who he was. So at this point in his life, we are in early 2000s, he is on the streets, no one really knows how he's making money, he does not seem close to his family and is known for being a ladies' man. And that brings us to June the 18th, 2004, when a 16-year-old boy named Liam Kelly went out to look for a person who he had given £200 to. The person in question failed to give that money back to Liam, so the teenager would go out and try to collect what was his. Liam Kelly is described by the people that knew him as boyish, up to all kinds of mischief. His parents described him as the man of the house, protector of everybody in the family home. He was known for playing on motorbikes, and at that time he would end up being the youngest victim of knife crime in Liverpool.
Good evening and welcome to Northwest Tonight. A boy of 16 was ruthlessly killed on the streets of Liverpool in a gangland-style murder. His age has shocked police as much as the way in which he was murdered, with 2 shots at close range.
Friends of Liam Kelly were laying more tributes to him this evening. The number of bouquets has grown steadily through the day. This morning, scenes of crime officers have been examining the place where he was gunned down. A local councillor says serious crime is rare in this part of Dingle, but people are worried.
Back to our timeline, having located the person that was owing him money now and established that the money wasn't there, Liam was pissed and he ended up throwing a bicycle. However, that bike went through the front window of the house and just smashed it completely. And there's no real information to say what Liam did from this point on when it comes to June the 18th. So he just seemed to have been pissed. We don't know if he picked up the bike, we don't know how he got back home. The lady whose window had just been smashed had a nephew that was called Anthony Campbell. So the next day, Anthony Campbell picks up the phone and calls Liam, and he calls him out for a straightener, which is a meeting where people get things straight. And it was said that it's probably to do with him, Liam, paying for the repairs for the broken window. Now, this meeting was supposed to happen at Grafton Street in Dingle. And Liam at this point didn't have a car, and it was said he didn't really have like a method of transport, which makes me believe that that bike wasn't really picked up, like when he smashed the window with the bike, that he just left it behind. So he asks a friend to pick him up and drive him to the location. This is happening the next day, so Saturday the 19th of June 2004. When Liam and his friend arrive to Grafton Street, Liam gets out of the car, and immediately after he does so, he is cornered. He was approached by 2 men who came from opposite directions. It was reported that Liam walked towards one of the men, and at the same time the second one took a shotgun and shot at Liam twice, once in the right arm and once in his chest. One of the men, the one with the gun, was allegedly Kevin Parle. The man would flee from the scene right after the shooting, and Liam is now hurt on the street, lying on the street, and he manages to drag himself to the house nearby. The homeowners would phone the emergency services, but unfortunately Liam was pronounced dead on arrival to the hospital. Immediately the police investigation ensues, and Merseyside police were quick to make arrests. They would arrest Kevin Parle, Anthony Campbell, and Peter Sinclair. Now, Anthony Campbell is the one that's actually connected to the house. So, as these men are interviewed, it comes out that Kevin had an alibi. A lady actually comes forward and says that he was with her during that day. So the police had no other option but to let him out on bail. So, as you guessed it, Kevin Parle would fail to return to answer bail. He was in the wind, and Campbell and Sinclair would face trial for the murder of Liam. In court, it would be heard how Peter Sinclair had the smaller part. He was the person to get rid of the burner phones and also would act as a lookout, while Kevin Parle would burn the clothing that was stained with evidence. The trial would also hear that Peter Sinclair drove the murder suspect to the house of the girl that I suppose provided him with the alibi, and then back to Liverpool to recover Kevin's car, and then waited for him while it was parked in Eastham in Wirral. Now, due to his role in these crimes, Peter ended up receiving an 8-year sentence for assisting an offender. Anthony Campbell would admit to the actual murder later and receive a life sentence. The woman that ended up providing a false alibi for Kevin was also later charged with perverting the course of justice. But even though 3 individuals were locked up initially, the main perpetrator was still at large, and nobody had a clue as to where he is or where he might be hiding out. A gap that I would love to have filled here is whether or not there was still some physical DNA here left, because we hear from the trial that a lot of it Peter Sinclair managed to get rid of, and then Kevin as well. But I'm just thinking, when it comes to this case and then the case of Lucy Hargreaves that we are about to talk about, So nicely put, so nicely worded. Whether or not there's still any DNA evidence. Like, does Peter know that? Does the Merseyside police know that? Because obviously, if Kevin Parle was to be found alive, then this DNA evidence would have to be compared to him. Because this crime and Lucy's crime are still only allegedly connected to Kevin until he's in the country to actually face prosecution. Another quick sideline here, just before we move on to speak about Lucy. Some of you might feel inclined to judge a victim here because they were not fitting your perimeters for a perfect victim, and Peter here really puts it best. Liam didn't get a chance to grow, even though it might be implied here that he was up to no good, that he was going to a straightener, maybe being involved with a gang. He had no chance to redeem himself and grow up and choose his own path. Peter would say Kevin has denied a teenager reaching major milestones in his life, including family celebrations, birthdays, careers, and relationships, something so many of us take for granted. When Liam was murdered, his mother Mary made a heartfelt plea directly to his friends and associates, where she begged them to tell the police anything that might help us bring his killers to justice.
The mother of a teenager shot dead in Liverpool has appealed to his friends to tell the police what they know about his killers. 16-year-old Liam Kelly was murdered in the Dingle area of the city in June. He was with a group of friends when he died. Now his mother Mary has written an open letter to them, begging them to talk to police.
I am pleading with you all to let the police know everything you know. You were my Liam's friends and still are in death. My Liam had told me that you were his family, and to me, families stick together no matter what. So please help me catch my child's killers. My Liam didn't deserve that cruel, evil death. He was my baby, my boy, my whole life. He was my child. I know it's not in your nature to help the police, but I am begging you to do some soul searching and do the right thing by my son, Liam. Your friend, Liam. How many more of our children are going to be killed before us as a community stand up and put these child killers away?
During this time, Kevin Parle remained on the run, and despite searches by the police officers, he was not found. And it was a little over a year later, on the 3rd of August 2005, that the Merseyside police got a call to a house fire. This house belonged to mother of three Lucy Hargreaves and her partner Gary Campbell. Lucy's house was in a different area. It was on Lambourne Road in Bolton. And on that night, luckily I say, 2 of Lucy's children were actually out, staying with the grandparents. So only 22-year-old Lucy, her partner Gary, and Lucy's 2-year-old daughter were present at the house. The events of the night started off with Gary and the daughter heading upstairs to bed, and Lucy was said to have stayed behind and then had fallen asleep on the sofa downstairs. And at some point in the early hours of the mornings, just after midnight, 3 masked men storm into Lucy's house, and they see her asleep on the sofa.
You know, she was just a nice, caring person and a devoted mother to her children. We've lost our beautiful daughter, and 3 children have lost their mother, and they'll suffer from the effects of that the whole of their lives. Somebody out there must have some information, however small. Could they please come forward tonight and tell what they know?
Lucy was described as a wonderful mom, protector of her 3 children. It was said that those kids had a really great childhood, that she was very girly herself, and that everybody that met her loved her. The 3 masked men that in our timeline just barged into Lucy's house were armed with a sewn-off shotgun, and Lucy was immediately shot. She was shot twice, once in the stomach and once to the head from close range. Then, once they realized that Lucy had passed away, they would take the duvet cover that she was sleeping under, covered it in petrol, and set it alight. The petrol was also poured around the entrance and the stairs of the house, probably the speculation is just to block off any exit points and any escape for those upstairs. Gary had woken up at this point, and he would later give interviews saying that Lucy's kid was actually sleeping in a cot, and he's just sleeping in the bed, and then he hears the banging on the door, and he hears the screams, police, 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 and then further bangs. So he would say that he remembers the flames coming up the stairs, and he immediately started reacting. He grabbed the daughter and smashed the window and jumped out, giving the baby to the neighbor. He then went round the house to the front and tried to go back in and get Lucy, but he couldn't handle the flames. He said he tried to go through the front door, but just couldn't, so he smashed the glass and went through the window and grabbed Lucy off the couch. He would say that he couldn't get in the front door because of the flames, that it was all black and just burning. He couldn't really see, so he had to get through the front window, smash it through, and feel with his hands. He picked Lucy up and he got her out. As Lucy was on the ground outside, everybody just realized that Lucy was dead. There was no time to save her.
Here's Crime Watch from 2006. 3 men burst into the house. Within seconds, one of them fires 3 shots at Lucy.
That was really, really shocking for different reasons than with Liam Kelly. Liam was 16, Lucy was 22, I think. But the circumstances were horrific. Get the petrol.
As Lucy dies in her front room, and Faye can be heard screaming upstairs, the killers douse Lucy and the downstairs of the house with petrol and set them on fire.
Lucy! Why? Lucy!
The gunmen run to their car before driving away. They abandon the vehicle and set fire to that too.
Lucy's parents would plead for somebody to come forward with information, and finally somebody did just that. 2 people ended up charged and brought to court, and the motive started forming. In 2006, Anthony Fat Tony Downs and Kirk Bradley would stand trial for the murder of Lucy Hargreaves. The prosecution would argue that the motive for Lucy's murder was due to a previous feud between Anthony Downs, one of the perpetrators, and Gary Campbell, Lucy's partner. In court, it will be heard that in 1993, when Gary, the partner, was just a teenager, he was actually in a stolen car that drove at high speed around the area of Houghton. Now, the driver wasn't Gary himself. It was somebody called Andrew Ellis that was 14 years old in 1993. And at some point during the drive, Andrew actually swerved. He took the car in reverse and hit a number of pedestrians. And one of those pedestrians was a 4-year-old Kevin Downs, who would die instantly. Kevin was the younger brother of Anthony Downs, one of the alleged perpetrators of the murder of Lucy Hargreaves.
Gary Campbell, Lucy's partner, was a passenger in a car driven by joyriders which reversed into a group of people, killing a 3-year-old boy. That boy was Kevin Downs. His brother Anthony, who was deeply traumatised by the death of his younger brother, was tried and acquitted of Lucy's murder. Gary Campbell has always said he was the actual target for the attack, not his innocent partner Lucy.
Early morning and flowers had already been laid at the spot where 3-year-old Kevin Downs lost his life. Kevin was killed instantly when he was struck by a car believed to be reversing along the pavement. Eyewitnesses said he'd been holding the hand of 15-year-old Sandra Cairns, herself carrying her 10-month-old baby cousin. Sandra was injured but managed to throw the baby into a hedge and to safety. Local people said they were on their way to a christening party.
I took my coat off and put it under the girl's head, and one of the policemen asked me to keep her talking so she wouldn't go asleep.
Residents blocked roads in the area today, saying they feared their children would be killed because of stolen cars being driven around the streets.
You can't win around here. You just can't win with these little children.
Here, just like with Liam Kelly's murder, we have the potential motive of an eye for an eye, revenge, which isn't actually foreign to gang crimes. Gary, Lucy's partner, had since given interviews, and he had said that he wasn't actually even in the car, that he was in a car like prior to the crash, but that he had gotten out, and that he was instead on the pavement short distance away. He would also say regardless of whether or not he was the intended victim, he has to live with his guilt every single day. Gary has never been looked into for the 1993 incident, and it was never actually confirmed. It's just speculated that he might have been the target of the attack here, because that would be the only option when it comes to the motive. I will tell you, like, the investigation into Lucy's murder, into Liam's as well, but especially into Lucy's, because it's still unsolved to this day, is just appalling. So we don't actually know. We don't know for sure. It's all really just alleged. Like, why did these men enter this house during that night? But in our story, a theory actually pops up in court, and it includes Parle's name, hinging on circumstantial evidence. It was claimed that the third man that burst into Lucy's home that night was none other than Kevin Parle. So he is now wanted in connection with not just one, but 2 murders. After hearing this, however, the revelation that Parle might be behind it, and also hearing from numerous witnesses, the judge concluded that the jury should return a not guilty verdict towards Downs and Bradley, due to the lack of evidence against those defendants. It would be because of this that Anthony Downs and Kirk Bradley didn't have to submit their defense, and they were immediately acquitted, duly acquitted, so both of them were out of jail. They would end up committing other gang crimes though, and even had a prison escape. Listen, the articles on these 2, I could make a case just out of these 2 individuals. They ended up escaping a prison van during transit. It was a proper, like, gang organized attack where other members of the gang attacked the driver, and this was in 2012. Bradley ended up being on the run, but Downs was recaptured. However, Bradley here, after that prison escape for like unrelated crimes, fled to the Netherlands, and this is where he would be caught and extradited. Just another, like, I don't know, baffling, just curveball of like, how did this man escape to Netherlands? This was 2012, like, just a prison escape, and he ends up in a different country. It could have been just another case of Kevin Parle, for all we know. Although neither of these men received a sentence for the murder of Lucy, it was still highlighted and alleged that the third man involved was Kevin Parle, who had still, at this point, not been found since he was a fugitive after the investigation into Liam's murder. During my videos, I usually like to tell you how I decide on the case, like after, the superficial browsing or just checking out a couple of articles, like before even listening to a podcast or all of the material that is out there. And here, this was my moment. Because, bottom line, Lucy's murder is still unsolved. And as you're about to find out, it doesn't seem like there is a lead. Like a single lead. If not these 2, if not Parle, who committed this murder. I think her kids, who are now teenagers or even older, we don't really even know their ages, would like to know. And it's just creepy. Like, if it's not any of these individuals, the ones that have been in court, charged with her murder and were then acquitted, who is it? Like, are they still out there? If not Parle, who? Are they still in the area? It just doesn't seem to be any clue. Because here is where I would like to proceed with an hour-long segment on investigation done by the police, but instead I'm going to give you the behind the scenes on the research. So the way that I look to confirm and look for leads and any articles on Lucy Hargreaves, and I've done the same with Liam Kelly and with Kevin Parle, is that I would do the Google search on the keywords, and then I would go through the filters. Usually the easiest way is to filter through the years, so that not only the most recent articles show up. What I can tell you is really a couple of bullet points between 2006 and 2019, and the articles were on the following topics. There was the reward put up by the Merseyside police. There was the prison escape in 2012 by the 2 bodies that were acquitted. There were appeals by Lucy's family. And also the police added his mugshot on the most wanted lists. The idea that Parle might have gone abroad also wasn't new, and it wasn't something that was introduced by Peter Bleksley in 2019. He had topped Merseyside's police wanted list since 2006, and all of the initial inquiries said that he was actually hiding in the Costa Blanca in Spain from the autumn of 2005, so sort of just after Liam's murder. And then we lose Parle's trail all the way until 2019. At least his trail online. I don't know if there are archives somewhere in some library, in news press, like in a newspaper archives somewhere that have any further information. These couple of bullet points, really 5 of them, that I have just stated, is everything that I could find online between those years. Which means, for me, the investigation didn't really go that far, did it? When it comes to Lucy, or really when it comes to Liam, but especially when it comes to Lucy's unsolved murder. In our story, the year is now 2019. Kevin Parle, whether dead or alive, had been managing to evade capture for about 14 years at this point. We have very limited information on him. He is connected to those 2 crimes also very loosely and by hearsay from everything that I have seen, and everything is very much alleged. Like, I have to say that to protect my ass, but also Peter has to say that in the interviews and the podcast and in the book as well. And something here yet again to emphasize on is whether or not there is evidence at the scene of the crime. Was there evidence when it came to Lucy's scene of the crime that could connect to Kevin Parle eventually? Because I have to admit, there is a reason why here we are saying alleged, and that his connection to any of these crimes is alleged, and that is because from everything that I have just told you, Kevin Parle has been linked to those crimes, but by the word of mouth, by like other criminals here. So I have to pinpoint that because that is something that I did find a bit bizarre in a way. Like, I think there was some DNA connection to him when it came to the first crime, the crime of Liam Kelly, the murder of Liam Kelly. But when it came to Lucy's crime, I'm really thinking, like, even if he is captured, do we have something? Do we have something to convict this man? Because the worst thing here, for me at least, would be, and for Peter I assume, if he is to slap the handcuffs on the man and then bring him to a trial, bring him to court, not to be able to convict, like after 17 plus years that this man had been on the run. Weird sideline, I know, but I just would like those kind of things answered. So 2019 comes around and Peter Bleksley enters the scene. Well, he has been on the scene, or rather on my radar, for a couple of years before that, because he was the chief on Channel's 4 Hunted series and had just at this point launched his podcast Manhunt, Finding Kevin Parle. You can learn more about Peter from multiple interviews that he had done online. Also, there's an episode of the podcast on his background, his undercover days, and then obviously like his interview for this morning with Holly and Philip, and then the happy hour interview, I would say, might give you the best idea of his work prior to the podcast and prior to publishing the book. I'm just going to pinpoint a couple of things from Peter's history that can explain why he's actually on the search for Kevin Parle and what he can contribute to it. And his early days started off with his work for the police. He worked for New Scotland Yard and he joined the Central Drug Squad. So this was late 1980s. He was 25 years old at the time, and he would say that with his chest puffed up, he felt rather pleased with himself and with his new position. He immediately started doing undercover work, and he kind of saw what I named in the script a gap in the market. He was getting feedback from criminal circles that if a guy shows up in a sharp suit, immediately they just notice that this is somebody they're not going to have negotiations in front of, that this person is an undercover police officer. Being from South London, he says this himself, his life prepared him for the undercover world. So he switches up the conversation as he now approaches this new undercover role. And the personality, he says, that he portrayed was essentially his own. He would talk about the things he knew, the three Fs: fighting, fucking, and football. And he kept the conversations to that, and of course the business, whatever illegal business he was observing at the time. His undercover jobs ranged from buying millions and millions of pounds of dollars worth of counterfeit currency, antiques, high-value stolen goods, different weapons as well. And he negotiated to kill people on several occasions. He was the gun for hire, the hired assassin, the hitman. Basically, Peter Bleksley was anyone that the criminal underworld needed him to be. So what had changed? From my understanding, this happened when Peter was in his late 30s. So he had already a decade and over a decade really working as the undercover police officer. And this is when, as part of one such job, he actually ended up being in a hotel room at Gatwick Airport. There was £4 million of heroin that was delivered to him. Peter proceeded naturally to test the heroin to see that it's real drugs, and then the guy whose heroin it was and him went down to the bar for a celebratory drink. And of course, this was a cue to the police to go and arrest the person. And this is when, however, the operation was so big that there were simultaneous arrests being made throughout the country for other people involved in this global international drugs conspiracy. And this is when a mistake was made, because when they actually all appeared in the dock together, they looked around and went, well, where is that cocky South Londoner with a long ponytail? I am still to find a picture of Peter Bleksley with a long ponytail. I'm gonna do a deep dive on Google for that. I'll be super pissed if it was just on the first page of Google Images. I'll be super pissed. We have to find it, Peter. We gotta talk. Okay, cool. So of course they pretty much figured out he was the undercover cop. And then with the guys from the outside and guys from prison, they communicated, and there was a plot to murder him that was discovered by the FBI. The short of the rest of his career was that his identity had been revealed and Peter had to go into witness protection. And he would say those were the most miserable 2 years of his life. And because of him having a mental health breakdown due to the paranoia and due to the witness protection program that he was put in for those 2 years, it ended his police career. He said he was 40 years old and he had nothing to fall back on. He had no vocation, no training, no qualifications. And this is when the opportunity for him to actually start sharing his knowledge with the world came about. He wrote his book, the first one called Gangbuster, about his undercover times, and then Hunted popped up as an idea, and this is where he was the chief hunting the fake fugitives. The concept of Hunted, if you don't know, let me introduce it to one of my favorite British shows, because it's just decent. I don't know. Wow, that is such a good selling point. What is the show? It's decent, okay? It's decent. It was decent in Peter's days. There's a bunch of fugitives. Can you tell that this is not scripted already? Sometimes people apply with their sister, family members. Sometimes they apply with their friend. I think you can still apply, by the way. I think it's still running. I hope it's still running. It's my comfort show. Anyways, so people apply, right, in pairs or on their own, and they are to escape capture for a certain amount of days. Usually it's around 3 weeks, 20-something days. Celebrity Hunted also exists, and they have some ridiculous thing. It's 7 days on the run. What is that, please? And they enjoy their life and are in jacuzzis and shit. Don't watch Celebrity Hunt. Okay, maybe watch it. I watched it. So you can watch it as well. Does that make sense? Probably not. So Peter was heading the unit that was actually capturing the fugitives for 6 seasons, if I'm right. Yeah. 4 of the main ones and 2 celebrity ones. Totally didn't know that on top of my head. until February of 2019. And this is when the series 4 of Hunted finished filming, and it was a great time for Peter to bow out after 6 seasons in total. From this point on, between 2019 and 2022, everything that we have on Parle is from Peter. Even the background bit that I have told you on Kevin Parle, I have learned from the podcast and the audiobook. So literally 99% of the information that we have on the man, like beyond the cases of Liam Kelly and Lucy Hargreaves, are from Peter. I'm saying that because, as I mentioned, you might have a strong opinion on him after listening to the little bits that I'm playing from his podcast or his interviews. You might think that this is some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy for him, that he's benefiting from it, which, although he denies and says that all the money goes to the search, might not be completely true. The man has to eat, he has to earn money somehow. Whatever you end up thinking about Peter, I would advise you to direct that in a different way and think what type of person is needed to catch somebody like Parle. Is it someone that will trigger him to come out of his shell, someone who will push the buttons, and then you might realize Peter's approach makes sense. Before we move on to the manhunt and to the theories section, something that stuck out to me was this quote from the podcast when Peter was referring to one of the women from Parle's past that was being voiced over. And the quote was, "There will be others who have been through what she went through." So I thought of having a different section here, adding some spice based off of a particular TV show that I might have watched for 20 years. Based off of also what you have already heard and what you're about to hear, and deliver a profile. This part is written by me. It's my own opinion and my own words based off of the information, the limited information that we have on Kevin, and based off of that quote that there will be others who have been through what those women had gone through, what the classmates had gone through, what like anybody interacting with Kevin had gone through. Because I think we have to take this from an angle where if Kevin Parle is alive, there are people interacting with him on day-to-day basis. And we have to look at how do we get those people to ring Crime Stoppers, to ring Merseyside Police, or to ring Peter Bleksley, whoever they want to ring. And for that, we need to know what those people are witnessing, how are they interacting with this individual. So let me deliver my version of a profile here. We are looking for a white male who is of the height of 198 centimeters or 6'6", with a broad build. His height will make him hard to conceal his identity. He has blue eyes, ginger hair, and a 1-inch scar on the left side of his head. He has been known to have cropped ginger hair, but he might have changed his style over time to protect his identity. This would be the man who, if you were in a car with him, you will feel unsafe, as he might decide to change gears on impulse. If you are his friend or associate, you might have noticed he's in a constant need to move on. He will be the type of guy who will have large amounts of money stashed in safe places he could access when he needs to. He will react the way he reacted in the past. He will travel and he will not hide his personality. If he is approaching you as a woman in a bar, he would be the type of guy at the bar to stick to a pickup line, like "we should do breakfast sometime." The guy who would have enough self-control to drink and smoke cannabis in moderation. Based on his past relationship history and the inability to establish one while on the run, he is most probably paying for sex work. As for what kind of job he might be doing for the criminal underworld, he might be a guard to the criminal organization in Spain, out of necessity, and by this point must have proven himself enough to be protected. He has previously used the alias Joseph Kenneth Parle and is sometimes nicknamed Hemp. My criminal minds fueled soul had to do that. I had to at least once in one of these videos have a section where I deliver the profile based off of the information that I have given you and based off of the little bits that you will hear now, because we are going into the theory section, or rather really Peter's investigation from this point on. So let's start off with the theories based on sightings in the areas where we have the least amount of information first, and then finish off with some of the most recent sightings and news reports. Peter had done the podcast episodes on a few countries, including Ireland, including Thailand. I actually think that there is a full episode on Thailand. There's a full one on Dubai. So I'm just going to briefly tell you the gist of those episodes and why he had actually thought of those countries as the potential countries where Kevin Parle might be living in. There is a mention of Thailand, and from my understanding, Peter is yet to go there. He is yet to get enough intelligence to make it valid for him to make a visit. It's on the scene, Thailand is on the scene because of how lax their immigration rules are. And it would be very hard to extradite Kevin Parle from Thailand if he is actually there. And also because of the previous mentions of Thailand. If you remember, during the background section, we have spoken about how one of the women had mentioned that Thailand might be the place where he has some connections. So the intelligence that we have and why Thailand is actually on the scene came with this article from 2020 that suggested that Kevin had been seen in the area of Koh Phangan in Thailand. During the investigation carried out by Peter, a witness came forward to say that they had once seen Kevin in a bar in this area of Thailand. So with this information, there were appeal posters created and translated into Thai with the hopes to eventually, after COVID, because this was still 2020, Peter goes to Thailand and then distributes those posters. There was also an episode of Manhunt on Cork, and Cork is a connection, as Ireland would be, an easy route for him to get back into the UK. As you're about to learn, Kevin would have connections in the UK, in the Liverpool area, because that's where he was brought up, he was raised there, but also there were some sightings that stated that either he never left the area or that he had returned circa like 2017, 2018. So more on that as we speak about those rumors, but this part includes leads that should be followed. And that for me is, how is he traveling and how has he been doing that for years? And we are going to mention that later on, the traveling part in particular, but again, it is a gap where I would love to have a lot more questions answered. And again, it is probably one of those areas where Peter might be reluctant, even if he knows, to share the information, because you don't want to share too much. And then Parle hears about it and then knows that you know how he's traveling and going from one location to the other. But I just need to know. One day I need to bloody know. Then there's Dubai and the whole podcast episode that was done on Dubai. Dubai comes into picture once we actually speak of Spain, because Marbella is inextricably linked to Dubai by crime, by the link of criminal underworld. Most of the area's criminal groups are between those two cities, Dubai and Marbella. So it is said by actual criminals who have given interviews, according to the articles that I have read, which I'm like, great, hopefully they're behind bars giving these interviews, that Dubai is like Marbella, but with no rules and no law. It's extremely rare for them, the police, to arrest anybody there. It's only happened a few times and always with some underlying political reason. Most of the top bosses, so people of the top of the criminal gangs, they live in Dubai and then they spend the summer in Marbella, so they have like holiday homes there. And then the soldados, meaning soldiers, go to Dubai when they feel like they're under surveillance. These criminals said that they're protected there, referring to Dubai, because there's no extradition. Peter did go to Dubai for his episode post-COVID, and he had been told that this person, who remained unnamed, was one of the major players. That's why he had gone there. He learned that there's 5 ways of trying to make contact with this man, and that he pulls the strings on the criminality in Spain. So Peter eliminated 4 of those ways to get in touch with him, identified the address, knocked on the door, and however here, Peter felt spooked, like nobody answered the door. He felt followed in Dubai, and the trip was then over.
I've followed that account and looked into it and discovered that you can buy an apartment on this development with a down payment of 100,000 dirhams, which is about £25,000, and then a 25-year loan, a mortgage in essence, at a reasonable sort of level. Whilst I'm doing that, the head of the company pops up, a highly esteemed and much respected man out here, I would imagine, who describes himself as a serial entrepreneur and has been operating out here for 30 years. And when you drive around, you'll see enormous great towers with that name on it, and we've been told they're one of the major players over here. Anyway, carry on, do my research, couple of beers, early night. Now, we had 5 ways of trying to make contact with this man and put the allegation to him that he's been helping Parle, and also, as I've been told, that he pulls the strings of some criminality in Spain.
We'd opted for number 5, hadn't you? That was what was...
Well, we tried or eliminated the other 4,
Yeah.
By courtesy of being here for the last few days. So we were down to number 5. Try and do a drive past, identify that address from the images that we've got, knock on the door or put a business card under the door.
The way that wraps up is that it would be difficult to extract Parle if he is in Dubai. That is the main gist that I had got from that episode that was done on it. And I don't know if Peter plans to go to Thailand or Dubai again, leave the flyers around, translate them into further languages, and then see if there's any intelligence there, if there's any tips, if there are any sightings of Parle there. And the information about these places is really limited, as Peter also doesn't want to give Parle the indication as to where he's headed next. Now, going into the manhunt theories, where we have a bit more information on, one that keeps popping up is, what if Kevin Parle never left the Liverpool area? There are 2 main sightings of Parle that make some people believe this. One happened as early as 2005, 2006, and we're going to speak about that now, and then there was a more recent one between 2017 and 2018. So, around year 2020, there was this article circulating the internet saying that Peter Bleksley spoke to a retired police officer who now works as a farmer in the north of England. A Land Rover Discovery crashed into his fields and sped around looking for the exit route back onto the motorway. So this man obviously gave chase after this Land Rover and watched as the car then smashed through the fence onto the lane and drove away. At one point, this ex-cop was as close as 15 yards away and watched as the driver would put their fingers up and speed away. And the ex-cop would later positively identify the man as Kevin Parle. If true, at some point, Kevin had remained in the UK. So at this point, this would be sort of in between Liam's murder and Lucy's murder, that he was still allegedly around here. Although this happened dating back in 2005, around 2006, in more recent times there was another male witness that came forward stating that they had seen Kevin in their hometown of Liverpool somewhere between 2017 and 2018. This man was one of the locals and they had apparently attended school with Kevin, so he was familiar with what Kevin would look like. The man told Peter that he had seen Kevin in a red Audi parked at some lights in the city of Liverpool. Is it Audi or Audi? How do Brits say it? It's a car, okay? The man would later inform Peter that he had actually heard Kevin was going to a cemetery, but he couldn't give any further details, like which cemetery, why was Kevin going there, anything really, any further information there. So from everything I gathered, those were the most promising sightings in that area, meaning that Kevin might have been in Liverpool at the beginning of his run and then might have returned before COVID if we are to find any of those sightings reliable. With evidence to believe that Kevin was in the UK, a large investigation began centered around Kevin's known associates within the UK, within the Liverpool area. It was because of this investigation there was another rumor around 2020 that said that Kevin is in a relationship with a Cockney girl whose dad works as a cabbie in London. No names have been dropped here and we have no further details on any of those tips. Those are two sightings that keep getting mentioned. So in 17 years there were no more sightings in the area. Does that mean that if he is in the Liverpool area, people might just not want to grass him? Here, if you're not from the UK and you decide to listen to the podcast or Peter's audiobook, you will hear him say, "No one likes a grass," like 20 times. Exaggeration, but no one likes the grass, and especially not when it comes to the gangs. I have looked into the origin because, of course, I'm a curious cat, okay? So the origin of calling somebody a grass, meaning a snitch, comes from the rhyming slang, grasshopper. Copper, hopper, and then grassing somebody is telling the copper or a policeman about a person. Does it make sense? No. Why are you looking at me? I was not born and raised here. I'm not fucking Shakespeare. Blame it all on Shakespeare, forever and always. To understand why someone in this area will not grass a fugitive, you need to understand a bit about the culture of gangs in Liverpool, and just about the culture of policing, really, because that is where that podcast episode really centered on. One of the incidents that didn't directly happen in Liverpool, but had severely affected the people in the area and also their view on policing, was Hillsborough incident, or Hillsborough disaster, as it's better known online. It might have been a defining moment in the history where Liverpudlians and everyone near the stadium in Sheffield who had someone die in the incident developed a strong sense of justice. This fatal human crush during a football match at Hillsborough Stadium in 1989 resulted in almost 100 people losing their lives and around 760 being injured. What else this incident is famous for is police not taking accountability, and people might not having the desire to go to the police to report crimes as they believe nothing will be done. The South Yorkshire police at the time were not prepared to concede that they were in any respect at fault. They actually blamed the fans for being late and drunk at the stadium and blamed the club for failing to monitor those fans and the pens where they were based. Such an unrealistic approach was claimed to have given the cause for anxiety as to whether lessons have been learned. This means that solidarity and suspicion of anyone in the position of power prevail in the area, and this is visible most among criminal organizations or anybody even loosely associated with them. And even though Kevin Parle might not have grown up in a gang area, he could have been pulled into one easily, because historically organized street gangs have played a part in the history of many major cities in the UK, and Liverpool was no exception. And the gangs there date back from really the early and then especially late 19th century. And you might have noticed a TV show being made on one such gang, Peaky Blinders, and that one is based in Birmingham. I know, stop screaming at me that none of these is based in the exact city that I'm referring to, but Liverpool had its own gangs that terrorized the city. Something that pops up when we speak about Spain, but here in Liverpool as well, is that the emergence of gangs is actually closely related to extreme poverty and unemployment that created slum streets which bred crime and violence. Even a century after 1880s and the emergence of the first gangs, in 1980s Liverpool was tagged by the media as Skag or Smack City because of the explosion in organized gang crime and heroin abuse, especially in the city's most deprived areas. Then throughout the years, in 90s, there were turf wars that erupted within Liverpool. There are some famous cases in this area, like the one of Rhys Jones, and there was just high levels of violence in the city that came to a head in 1996 when, following the shooting of a gangster in the area, there were 6 other shootings occurring in 7 days, prompting Merseyside police to become one of the first police forces in the country to openly carry weapons in the fight against gun crime. Early 90s, when Kevin Parle was on the streets of Liverpool, didn't really bring much change. It was revealed by the Home Office statistics that there was a total of 3,387 offences involving firearms in the Merseyside region during the 4-year period between 1997 and 2001. And Liverpool was the main centre for organised crime in the north of England. When it comes to the organized crime and how those gangs, those firms rather, operated, they were active internationally and within Liverpool, and they were not limited to the drug trade. Crime groups from Liverpool are known for trafficking drugs in the Netherlands, and it's also been stated that the distribution networks within Ireland and the UK exist, and even allegedly some Mediterranean holiday resorts are controlled by the Liverpool gangs. So Peter gives us an insight in his podcast into how such organizations might operate, saying that the city acts as a supplier for the region. Then there are people on the top that are funding it, below level is doing the logistics of the operations, and then we have the wholesalers who then have their own wholesalers. These wholesalers and like people on the top, as you know, as you go up the rank, then have the ability to enforce the payment. And then younger people are involved in the chain. And this kind of triggered a memory of like earlier on in the case where Parle was witnessed with the young kids. That would explain him being a member of the gang and already at that point not really being at the bottom, but kind of being in a higher rank.
What was the scale of the industry in Liverpool?
Good point, because the scale had become so large that these organisations now had developed tiers of influence and power, if you like. So you'd have the guys at the very top who would be responsible for the biggest importations, perhaps not even getting involved in the importation themselves but funding it. You would then, below them, have the guys who are actually involved in the logistics of bringing the stuff in, of hiding it, of transporting it. You would then have the next tier, who would be the major wholesalers, who would have a share or a stake in each importation, and which would probably be worked out in advance. You might have, if there was a ton of coke on a ship, you might have your name down for 100 key or whatever.
And might you have to have weapons in order to protect your investment, your supply chain?
They would certainly help. The violence would tend to come in the lower down the chain you went, for various reasons, I think. But again, Liverpool is interesting in that regard too. But yeah, more so. So for example, once the wholesalers then started to disperse their importation to their own wholesalers, that's where I think rip-offs suddenly start to become a bit more prevalent. So you need some very heavy people behind you so that you know that you can enforce. And also often the business works on credit. So you might give one of your wholesalers 5 kilos. You'd expect payment for that either the next day or by the end of the week. He has to pay you for that, and you have to be able to enforce that. So that's where the sort of goons with the guns come in.
If Parle is to have been protected at this point already, and especially now 17 years while on the run, if Parle is to be protected back then in early 2000s and especially now 17 years later, he would definitely not be the bottom feeder, and based off of the background we have on him, this would fit a narcissistic personality. What the psychologists have said in the podcast episode are that Parle is only the star where people know him. He gets off on that. He can't resist the pull to one such area. And if this is true, Parle might have never left the area or had gone back to it at some point in the last decade. However, there is one country, rather one coastline, where according to podcast by Peter Bleksley and most sources online, with the knowledge we have of criminal gangs, Parle is most likely to be based in, and that is Spain. Enter Spain, and in particular Costa Blanca. In 2006, just a year after the murder of Lucy, it was reported that Kevin had been seen in the city of Torreviejo in Costa Blanca. The eyewitness said that Kevin seemed to have been in a holiday park and reported that he was seen as a gentle giant among those at that same holiday park. So this was supposed to be credible because of Kevin's height. However, it's quite possible that Kevin could have been hiding in both areas of Costa Blanca at the time. Just like with all of the other theories, how does Spain fit the bill? How has he not been weeded out yet? What is the case with the crimes there? Why would people maybe stick out to him? Because it's different, right? In Liverpool, you understand, like if he has been born and raised there and he's still hiding out in that area, which is risky, don't get me wrong, you can understand how, like, he has loyalties, right? Like, he has connections in the area and has people that probably owe him shit, because that's how these people communicate. You have to have something over someone's head. Why Spain? Well, to understand that, maybe even more than in Liverpool, people stick to their own in Spain. This is where I put in the script. Ever been to Ibiza and have not heard a word of Spanish? I love how I put it as if this is my personal experience. Like, yeah, I go to Ibiza every year, party hard, and you don't hear a word of Spanish because everybody is a Brit. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Just, I'm gonna break it down now so it doesn't sound like a teenager speaking to you. But according to the National Crime Agency's Director General of Operations, Spain is not a safe haven. Many fugitives are trying to blend in within the larger British communities who have made their homes in Spain. And if you're the resident, you may know one of them from your town or village. This is where I'm going to loop you in with a ton of information that I have found from this Guardian article that is called How Marbella Became a Magnet for Gangsters. First, the city had to become a tourist location, and this would happen around 1960s. This would be during the development boom, when Costa del Sol was transformed into a tourist hotspot of southern Europe. Even today, when you think about any Mediterranean coast, the first thing that pops to mind is tourism, and that is exactly what had happened here. During Franco, they would focus on just bringing the money in. The holiday makers that would go to public beaches, the emerging class of jet setters that found their holiday homes as well in Marbella. So the focus was get people in, they don't do any crimes, and they bring you the money. So it meant that people started turning the blind eye. And this meant that once people started ignoring who was coming in as long as they were spending the money, Marbella became a destination for the global criminal elite. According to the Spanish Intelligence Center for Counterterrorism and Organized Crime, there are at least 113 criminal groups representing 59 different nationalities operating out of that area. So with the recession, families stopped coming to the areas. In the podcast episode, Peter especially refers to Benidorm. And locals would drop the prices for bread and breakfasts. Bread and breakfasts? Sure. Meaning that the type of tourists have also changed, because now they would just have to accept anybody coming in. And this had its consequences, as the clientele is suddenly just criminals. And this is something where, yet again, I have to point out a gap, or rather, possibly a behavioral insight that we need. Because COVID happened once Peter took over this investigation, started recording for the podcast, and we started following his journey. And we again have to think about how COVID had affected that, how the economic crisis, especially in the places in Europe like Spain, if he is there, had affected his behavior and the movements of these gangs. Because there's still quite a few faces on the most wanted list. Kevin Parle is not the only person there, and it is speculated that a lot of people are based in Spain. We're going to talk about the Operation Captura in a second, but what I'm thinking is, if this is the case and we take the history, which is what had happened here, right? Like, because of the recession, they lower the prices anywhere, and then because the prices are low, people that have the money, people that are in these criminal organizations can afford to live there. Can we, based off of any knowledge that we have had on criminals and gangs in the recession times, kind of pinpoint where they might be now, based on how they migrated then, where they might be focused now? One aspect then of how these criminal organizations and people that are the fugitives that are in Spain that have never been brought and extradited back to the UK and how they stay there is then that they're protected because of the money that they bring in. They're sustaining these areas. The other aspect, as I mentioned, is that people stick to their own. So let me tell you how this might function. Based off of the article that I have read in The Guardian, I have divided them into different levels. So the lower level, you have the returners. You have like possibly tourists, right? Somebody who goes abroad, commits a crime, like steals a watch or whatever, but will eventually return to the UK, and then, well, the crime is committed on foreign territory. And then you have the stayers, people who are going abroad in order to stay abroad, in order to avoid capture and in order to join the criminal organization, the part of the gang that is operating from that area. And here the spirit is very much everyone knows everything and everyone knows everyone. So to give you the example, let's say you're a Brit joining the criminal organization there, you would have your own community. And by that I mean you would have gyms that only Brits go to, bars that only Brits go to, food shops that only Brits go to. So if you were to then walk into a Serbian bar, you would have a problem because you would look like an outsider. But then on the other end of that coin, if you're integrated, you will know how not to make a mistake and you will ensure that you are just going to the areas and to the establishments where you're protected by the Brits, by your own. So with this intelligence, the authorities have started doing something about locating fugitives around the time of the crimes that we are talking about today. So Operation Captura was launched in 2006, and by June 2019, 96 fugitives were listed. All but 10 were captured by February 2020. This is a multi-agency operation, and its main goal is to detain criminals wanted by the UK that are hiding in Spain. Because of its success, it also expanded to the Netherlands and Cyprus areas. And recently, in 2022, a new appeal for information to trace and capture British fugitives in Spain was launched by national crime agencies in partnership with Crime Stoppers. From what I have seen, all of the Crime Stoppers numbers related to Operation Captura are anonymous, as in, like, if you ring them, your number is hidden. That is what I have read online, allegedly, and it's all done in order to encourage people to actually give leads. And there was a new list with the names and pictures of 12 known offenders that was provided to the public, and it was actually successful because one fugitive was captured within 24 hours of the launch of this new campaign. Something I have to say here, looking into those lists, on the lists in articles published this year, out of the 12 most wanted men that are believed to be in Spain, Parle is not one of the names on the list. That, to me, doesn't mean that there is intelligence that he's no longer in Spain, or it might mean that, but he is still on the most wanted list on the NCA website, the National Crime Agency. And he's still very much wanted. Just from the official articles, doesn't seem like the consensus might be that he is in Spain. Just had to point that out because, again, I don't want this to be biased. I don't want us to be like, okay, no, Spain is where I have the most information, so he must be in Spain. Just trying to give you a general overview of everything. But we also have to consider that with COVID and knowing the agencies are on their tail, it's expected that the gang behavior might have changed. Here we actually have the insight of the prosecutor in the region, who said that anyone who thinks that the criminal organizations are the same as they were before, so sort of structured like a pyramid, is wrong. It's not like that anymore. There's something that he had actually named the Uberization of organized crime. So there's no division of territory, right? Like when we think about organized crime, we usually think about narcos. We usually think about Mexico, right? Like you don't go on my turf because then you lose your head and like we'll kill you and hide your body in all sorts of different ways. Instead, it's more like a diagram that reflects the division of labor, different roles and activities of each organization. And this to me, if we are to believe that this is correct, that people are actually being divided based off of the roles and the activities, the purpose that they serve, might be the main reason why we don't to this day know where any of those most wanted people are. Something I'd like to see, and only Peter would have, is the Matrix. Okay, what I mean by this is the most promising leads based off of his investigation, and also if Merseyside Police was to have this one day, I would fucking love to see it, against the years and the areas based on their skills, the role that we believe Parle fulfills, based off of the profile, based off of his behavior. And I think this might hold a clue as to his movements, and possibly the transport mode, because I think that is the main thing, like how is he transporting himself between these areas, if we are to believe that he might have gone to Spain but had returned to Liverpool, or had he left Liverpool area, etc., etc. Now that you have the inside knowledge on how the criminal organizations might operate when it comes to Spain, let us talk about the most promising sightings from what I have gauged from Peter's podcast. So there was a sighting in the small Spanish town of Albier. And Peter visited the beach town of Albier, where a source had told him that he had watched the 6'6" Scouser as recent as September of 2019 almost get involved in a fight after bar staff tried to get him out of the group of other Scousers, Liverpudlians, which included 2 women, Parle's friends, who'd been allegedly snorting coke in the toilets of that same bar.
Albier's buildings are a lot more low-rise. There's restaurants, of course, plenty of them. Estate agents, a beauty parlour, and the supermarkets. There's an Aldi and another supermarket here. So it's kind of like a Spanish town. And it looks okay. It's spotlessly clean. There's no litter. There is, however, wherever I go, there's more than a smattering of English accents, quite a lot of Scouse accents, and quite a few people with hoodies and man bags. Not a look that I favour.
According to informants who've contacted Peter, and who don't wish to be interviewed or identified, Kevin Parle likes the town of Albier. And there's one bar he visits more than others.
Only a week ago, a source told me that Kevin Parle drinks in the chill-out bar in Albier. He didn't know that as a fact. He was relaying that information to me that he'd got from somebody else.
This is where Peter would be told a couple of things. That the area of Spain, Costa Blanca in particular, is key. That Kevin is not attempting to hide himself, that he is highly visible, he doesn't seem to be making huge effort to keep himself discreet, and that the more time that he's spending there, he's going to find more and more people that had seen Kevin Parle. This witness had told Peter that Parle is there because he knows people and the area, and that the closer that Peter gets to him, Kevin is going to be hesitant to leave the Spanish coast area. If he does, it might be back to Liverpool. If he goes anywhere else, it might just be temporary, because, according to this person, he has been in Spain off and on since 2006. Peter would go to this bar, and from what I have gathered from the podcast, it seemed like there was a tape surrounding the bar, so it already seemed like somebody might be looking into it, and the bar looked shut. So, of course, Peter isn't giving up here. He hears that there's definitely a cannabis bar around called the Chill Out Bar. And this is when he decides to do what is called a house to house in police terms. He learns the information here, speaking with people around the chill out bar, that the criteria to go into these clubs is that you have to be a resident and you have to show your ID.
Right, and in Spain and other places, they have these cannabis clubs or cannabis associations, as they're called, right? And you can pay anything from like €20 to €100 or more to become a member. You've got to show your photographic ID, you've got to be resident, and then you can go to these clubs, have a drink, and smoke your weed. Okay, we shift our focus a little bit, and the following morning, Mark and I, and we're told where it is, right? We said it's between a bar called Cocktail and a gym, right? Again, in Albia.
It did seem like this place was sketchy. He learned that the owners of the bar next to it were Russians and that they had issues with drugs. He would leave flyers around, but he doesn't find Kevin Parle. Peter's latest leads and the latest stuff that I have found about Spain actually led him to a different coastline. So from Costa Blanca, we go towards Costa del Sol. And these are the leads from 2022. In a single article that I have found online, it is said that Kevin has been working as a cash collector for Puerto Banús criminal underbelly. And it was said that Peter actually went to Malaga as close as July this year, following 2 different tip-offs. And it is said that Peter actually went to Malaga in July this year. The last podcast episode that Peter released for Manhunt was in May. So I'm not sure how valid this information is and whether or not these tip-offs actually paid off. But in this article, it is said that Peter went to Malaga. And here, according to this article, Peter had said that he had credible independent sources who have both independently told him that Parle works as a money collector in and out Puerto Banús for Manchester gangsters. This is where we need the reliability of these leads and how they make sense in terms of movement, as Puerto Banús, as I'm showing you on the map, is over 5-hour drive from Albier. It fits the bill, being in Marbella area, close to Gibraltar, but the dots are not connected enough for us to make conclusions at this time, at least not for me. Again, based off of those sightings, yes, he could have been in Spain for all these years and moved between Albier and Puerto Banús, but also we just don't know how, when, at what times, and mainly why. The Puerto Banús tip was the last piece of information until a few days ago I actually saw another article. So Peter actually talks about this case in his podcast. There's a whole episode dedicated to it. But as the place where these 2 tourists that we're going to talk about disappeared was over 5 hours from Albier, I thought this again might be a stretch. But then hearing about the Puerto Banús lead, I thought of looking into it, and then looking into the 2 disappeared people, there had actually been an update in that case, and I definitely thought, okay, this might be worth mentioning and including here just so that you have a clear picture. Honestly, I'm just glad that this case is being investigated, because just like with Lucy's case, it seemed like no one was looking into it. And this one is recent, and it's just a piss take. At some point you kind of start thinking like, has the police just not looked into these cases, and why? Is it because Lucy's partner might have been connected to somebody in a gang in 90s? And here, is it because one of the victims or both might have actually had something to do with a gang? It's the way that they have reported Liam as a person, and we didn't have any insight into Liam Kelly up until Peter Bleksley took into investigation. It's just somebody's life seems to matter a lot more than other victims' lives. The case on hand is the one of Danny and Liam Poole, father and son, from Burgess Hill in West Sussex. These two ended up going missing while on a road trip together in April of 2019. They would end up telling the family that they were flying out to search for a holiday home and reportedly took a suitcase containing £20,000 in cash. During their trip, it would be found out that they actually went to a golfing resort in the seaside town of Estepona. Estepona is in the Marbella area and very close to Puerto Banús that we had just spoken about. Here, they were supposed to meet somebody at a Chinese restaurant, and Liam actually ended up leaving with the man, but Danny, the father, left the hotel the next morning. So it is said they meet this man in the Chinese restaurant, they leave the luggage, the passports and rental car at the accommodation where they're staying. Liam leaves this restaurant with these men, and this is apparently according to Peter because of the CCTV footage that they have had, but Danny leaves and goes back to the accommodation. However, then Danny also disappears the next day. They will never be seen again, and their bodies were never found. So in 2022, Peter presented the family of Danny and Liam with the evidence from the source that he had met in 2020 that he had shared with the police. He claimed to have been speaking with an informant within a gang who said that Kevin Parle's men were behind the disappearance of the father and the son. The source had told Peter the ominous sentence of "the father and the son from Burgess Hill won't be seen again." He had later met this source face to face and discussed Danny and Liam, and the source told him that the criminal network surrounding Kevin was responsible for the disappearance. He said he had also identified a number of individuals in Kevin's network, some of whom might have residential and business addresses on the South Coast and Sussex, not far from Danny and Liam's house. And everything, according to Peter, points to these cases being linked. With this case, if linked to Parle, there are possible clues to locations and behavior. So we have the golfing resort. Later during the investigation, rather really the family trying to solve this case, the grandmother of the family would actually go to Spain, and she visited the golf resort where the two men stayed. She actually told the BBC that her grandson didn't play golf and that visits to this area really made her suspicious, like this just didn't fit the behavior of them. No one in these podcast interviews, and Peter did interview the members of the family, seemed surprised that this might be why they were there, that there might be a drug deal going on here, making me think that if Parle is connected, he does have direct links. He is in touch with in the UK, and it's much easier to investigate those here. Like, how did father and the son get in touch with people in Spain? I think this gives us actually the opportunity, if Parle is connected with this, to finally catch the guy. Like, how did they make contact with people in Spain? How did they know where to go? Who were they in touch with? What are those links? How did they know how much money to make? Like, all of those questions that need to be answered if we are to tackle maybe not Parle, maybe somebody else that is on the most wanted list. Now, there's another thing that in my mind showcases possible behavior of whoever is behind this, and it came with, yet again, can I just emphasize that this is the family investigating and looking into the disappearance of their loved ones, not the police, the family. After the disappearance of the father and the son, the grandmother actually says that the family received a message from Morocco asking for a ransom of £100,000. They actually managed to scrape for this money. They collect this money, but never got a call back as to where and who they should meet. Again, thinking about the behavior here, was the family here on the right trail? Or did the gang just get spooked? Because 100k anywhere, but especially in Spain, especially in European countries, might go a long way. So was this money supposed to end in Morocco? Was it supposed to end in Spain? And was the family actually on the right trail? Like, why would you suddenly reject the ransom handover? Why did this never go through? Were they spooked? Or was the family maybe too close for comfort, too close to finding something about somebody? 5 months into this case, 5 months after the disappearance, the police closed it shut. And there's only recently been an update. Actually, during the days that I was researching this, which is why I decided to include it here. And the update came on the 28th of November. Police in the UK launched a massive probe under the name Operation Pheasant following the disappearance of the father and the son, and they have now confirmed that they're treating the case as a homicide. I could not see any further information at the time of recording of this video. I just checked. I can't see that there's anything else. The only thing is that if you know anything, you can call 101 and quote the Operation Pheasant name. But in our timeline, this is where the trail for Kevin Parle truly goes cold. So to finish this story off, to finish the story on Parle off, let us talk about the rumors, or rather the leads that Peter and the experts he put to evaluate those might have dispelled, or are not as believable as some of the other theories. And one of them comes with a 2020 article and the information that I have already stated, and that is that Kevin Parle has a girlfriend whose dad is a cabbie in London, right? So this is the intelligence that Peter had received. Now my question here is, would Kevin Parle, based off of what we know about him and based off of the possibility that he is in a gang, be able to have a girlfriend, a long-term relationship, expose himself not just to that person, but also to anybody that they know, their family, their friends? The risk here for him would be immense. But then, wouldn't he be putting himself at risk having many girlfriends, which would have been a pattern of behavior for Parle? Out of everything really I have heard, reading the book, listening to the podcast, I think that hiring sex workers might be the most logical explanation when it comes to Kevin's personal life. Another rumor, rather something that I wanted to explore more, is the, quote-unquote idea that he had been in Spain, just different parts in Spain, all this time, with possibly a quick detour to Liverpool around 2017 or 2018, according to the quantity of the sightings. Here is where I'd like us to take another detour, as this got me thinking about the way that he might have been transporting himself for the past 17 years. If we think he's comfortable where he is and will look for that sense of protection, it makes sense to stay in the areas flooded with Scousers, with other people from Liverpool especially. But then what about travel? This is the guy who would have inevitably moved around. I have a feeling that Kevin would have been bored just being undercover, just being in one area. Here is where, as an immigrant, I have looked into the immigration, into the visas that you might need. How do you get from one country to the other? And I have in particular looked at Spain, and then Thailand and United Arab Emirates. And interestingly, if we are to say that this man has a passport and is traveling that way, which I think we can all agree, and the experts that Peter had interviewed had agreed, would have been extremely risky and extremely stupid. He's 6'6". It would just be risky. But there must be an idea, like if he's entering clubs with the ID, that he has some sort of fake ID. How good it is, how good it would work in terms of like the modern surveillance, we don't know. Let's just have a supposition here. He would be able to enter for at least like 90 days to certain countries like United Arab Emirates. When it comes to Thailand, it would be 30 days without any visa, so without like going the extra mile, without any hassle of like actually doing any admin work. And then if he has another fake passport, maybe he can stay, go in and out of the countries. However, according to the immigration experts that Peter had interviewed, he would not be using his passport, as there's a huge risk, and just risk sometimes means a chat with an immigration officer if anyone suspects a thing. He could, however, and this is where we really reach full circle, go through Ireland if he was to have returned to Liverpool area, for example, by lorry or as cargo. Basically, it will be most likely, or more likely, that he will be in a lorry or as cargo, transported in some sort of undercover way rather than him just jumping on a plane. And then he can go by ferry, use cabs, even if he was to have returned ever to the Liverpool area. This is why one day, if we were to have a map with pins in it, it would just be epic. As to me, him coming back home is just too much of a risk. After 12 years, around 2017, what kind of strong connections could he have had to have returned? If we were to believe some of these sightings, or that he could have just returned to the Liverpool area for that period of time in 2017, what kind of strong connections could he have had to return? Or rather, what kind of life event maybe could have happened for him to return? Did something happen to anybody in his family? Not that he seemed to have cared, but anybody that mattered in his life. That is something that, again, I would explore if we are to believe one of these sightings is more credible than the other. Him sticking to a country, maybe not a city in a country, but a country, makes sense, or following where the gang is sending him, whether or not that is in the same country or others, but where he knows the transportation will be safe. But he can easily be extradited from Spain. That is something why people are considering other areas like Dubai and Thailand. So sticking to a gang with a base in other countries where he will not be so easily extradited from might be a better explanation. I just got immediately tired from that sentence. Why did I not break that down? The most prevalent myth, however, we reach almost the end of this, is Kevin Parle a dead man? And according to Peter, no one in Costa Blanca breathed a word of him being dead. The rumor is very much Liverpool-based.
Yeah, there's a big urban myth that Kevin Parle is dead, right? It's been a myth that has been propagated very cleverly for years and years and years, and in fact, I have a number of sources, as you can imagine, in the last 20 months. I've been flat out on this. I know that Merseyside police for years believed that myth, that he was dead. Right, I know that.
And what method of death was that?
Oh, there's various ones, you know. I've been told I need to dredge the bottom of the Mersey. A common one is that he was chopped up into bits and thrown into the Mediterranean. But all the time, when I say to any of these people, well, who, where, when, and how was he chopped up, right? They change the subject, or they get abusive, because nobody can provide any proof of it whatsoever.
There are three main theories if Kevin Parle is to be a dead man. One of them is that he was murdered before he left Liverpool. Spoiler alert, all three of them are that he's murdered. It's like he doesn't die a normal, natural death. No, he's in a gang. So if he was murdered before he left Liverpool, that would mean that all of the sightings of him in Spain would be lies, would be just misgivings to Peter. And Peter fully believes that there were witnesses who would prove that Parle was in Spain and would make this irrefutable. So he discards this idea that Kevin Parle might have been murdered before he even left Liverpool. The second one is he made it out and later was murdered and buried abroad. According to Peter, Kevin, at that point even, of just leaving Liverpool area, was notorious. And his body, to have remained undiscovered with modern technology, is beyond the realms of possibility. To which I say, he did remain on the run for this long. According to Peter, however, for this to have happened, a deep and a big hole is needed to keep somebody 6'6" underground without ever having been discovered. Then there's a third theory, which is that he is murdered and taken to the sea. If he had been in any coastline areas, whether it's Dubai, whether it is in Spain, this is a possibility. To play the devil's advocate here, we have covered other cases here where cartels were involved. We have covered Miriam Rodriguez's case of the mother that hunted her daughter's killers down. And if it is a gang, like, he doesn't have to be buried at sea. He could have been burned, his body could have been burned, he could have been chopped up. Like, there's different ways to conceal someone's body. However, something that nobody can answer me, dead or alive, what is so special about this man? Why are we protecting him? No one can agree how long he was on the run before he was killed, and no one seems to agree on the location and the motive of his death. National Crime Agency is indeed still looking for a man who is alive, and this, in Peter Bleksley's mind, everything that I have said so far convinces him that Kevin Parle is not dead. The main case, in my opinion, for Kevin Parle's death is the lack of crimes that we are aware of. Okay, hear me out. So, obviously, if he's in the criminal underworld, if he's being protected by people who don't want their crimes to be discovered, yeah, cool, that makes sense. However, this guy was clearly escalating, if we are to believe that he had been linked to the alleged crimes, Liam Kelly and Lucy Hargreaves. So he would have definitely committed a crime again, and I just can't believe that for 17 years nobody would have snitched on him. Nobody would have called an anonymous line. Nobody would have made a call from a burner phone and just be like, hey, this guy, like, look into him. Like, that he never slipped up. Like, yes, if everything that he is doing, if all of the communications for him are within a gang, within a community, but he had never slipped up, he had never crossed paths with somebody who is not a Scouser, like, I just find it really, really hard to believe. However, then the main point against him being dead, so Kevin Parle is alive, main point, here is the lack of background and actual behavior points that we have on him and his connections to the world outside of Liverpool. He might have this protection that we just don't know of. We just don't know enough on Parle's life. I say after speaking about this for 2 hours, yes. Something here as the main point for the theory that Kevin Parle is actually alive is something that Peter keeps saying during the podcast towards everybody trolling him and seemingly protecting Parle. And that is a question. Why do you have dead man's interest at heart? Kevin Parle, in my opinion, is worth protecting only if alive. If he is dead, he is not an innocent victim. He's not Miriam Rodriguez's daughter. He's not somewhere where a gang never wants him to be found out. Someone could have made a call on a burner phone, never given it a second thought. Unless he is just that important somewhere for whatever gain he is providing to someone. If you have information about Kevin Parle's apparent whereabouts, contact Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111 or Merseyside Police by ringing 101, or you can contact Peter Bleksley directly if this video turned you in that direction. Once Kevin Parle is no longer seen as an asset by the criminal organization protecting him, he loses all the power. Once the world, as Kevin Parle knows it, has shrunk enough, he will emerge, dead or alive. And that is the story on Kevin Parle and his alleged victims. Now I pass it on to you. With the information in hand, I understand that most of the leads and most of the sightings lead us to one country, yes, but I have really tried my very best to give you an unbiased overview of all of the information. And with that, what would you ask Peter Bleksley? What kind of information do you need to make any further conclusions? And with the information in hand, what do you believe he's doing? Where is he? Is he dead? Is he alive? What does his life look like? How is he interacting with people? Because I think all of these little clues and tidbits are what is eventually going to help people catch him. Whether it is Merseyside Police, whether it is Peter Bleksley, whoever it is that is after Parle, this is how we catch him. And I hope for the sake of, honestly, everybody, that then they would have enough evidence to connect him to those crimes, because if that is the case, if he is caught after being on the run for 17 plus years and they can't connect him to those crimes, I mean, what is the point? I truly hope that there is evidence, there is enough evidence for us to actually connect him to those crimes then, and bring whoever killed Lucy to justice, and really whoever was behind Liam's killing to justice. I actually can't wait to hear people's theories when it comes to this one, so drop them in the comments. I want to know your opinions. If you are British, if you actually know even more than I could dig up on the criminal underworld, let me know what you think. If you are an ex-police officer, let me know what you think. If you're Peter Bleksley, call me, okay? Cool. I don't answer unknown calls, but you can be a no number in my phone. That sounded creepy as fuck. Sounded creepy as fuck. I'm just going to normally tweet at Peter Bleksley and see if he wants to have a conversation or if he has opinions based off of this video. It's just gonna, what the fuck? Why are you prompting ex-police officers to track you down online? Do you know your search history? You research true crime every fucking week. Do you think that will not be considered weird? Great chat with myself in the room. Totally don't sound insane. So let me know your theories, and I'm gonna go now. What is this? So this is a camera, right? And what is this? There's like a hole for a screw. Did you see this? Please, why is there a hole for a screw? Like, how? Why is that necessary? Because you can unscrew it. But then, what is there, guys? I'm just discovering holes on my iPad. What is there? Why is that an important hole for me to unscrew this screw? What happens when I unscrew this thing on an iPad? I need to Google this. Wait. Okay, I think I cracked it because the Google searches just show me screws. This screw hole iPad. Which is somehow more problematic, honestly, than my criminal searches. I think it's to do with the frontal camera. Anyways, not important. I don't know why I just went into that sideline. I definitely think I have undiagnosed ADHD or something, because my mind goes places, okay, it goes places. Screw hole, iPad search history about to be deleted. I will be seeing you in about más o menos 10 days with the last case of the year. I know. Girls got arrested for Christmas and just gain weight. I don't know what to tell you, and work on other cases, because I hope to take the channel, this very channel you're on right now, that you should like and subscribe and do stuff too. Again, made it weird. I hope I take it in the right direction, the direction that I want to take it in the next year. I bloody hope so. That would be so fucking brilliant. You have no idea. You have no idea what kind of people I would bring on this channel. They would be people writing books. Writers, yes. It's not even Easter egg needed. You know exactly what type of people I would bring to this channel. I have a whole playlist called True Crime Books. You know exactly what type of people I would want to have conversations with. Now Maya out to edit this and then work from the office tomorrow. Yay! Said nobody ever. Nobody ever. I have actually seen a LinkedIn research the other day that said that people, not research, like a poll, definitely not research. So there was a poll, right? And people were asked by somebody who had influence or whatever, like, do they prefer working from home, hybrid, or working from the office? And what do you think the poll had discovered? The people still actually prefer mostly working from home, and then hybrid, and then it was the office. Wow, shocker. I know. Yet again, I have no idea why I have taken this road. But I will be exiting this video now, and I shall be seeing you guys shortly. Bye. This is not a mic drop type of exit. It's definitely not. And that is exactly what you expect out of me. Cool. Bye now. Bye.